wear violence like expensive cologne, who've never bent a knee to anyone. Zareth Constantine was that man, until the night he walked into a dimly lit club and saw her dancing under neon lights, all 4 feet 9 inches of her, and felt something inside his chest crack open like a fault line before an earthquake. She was everything he'd been taught to overlook, everything his world would mock, everything he should have walked away from. But obsession doesn't ask permission, and what began as a single glance across a crowded room would ignite a war that would cost him everything he'd built, everyone he'd trusted, and nearly the one thing he'd discovered he couldn't live without. This is the story of a king who found his weakness, and a woman who refused to be anyone's crown. The thing about power, Zareth Constantine had learned over 34 brutal years, was that it required constant feeding. Like a beast chained in the basement of your soul, it demanded blood, loyalty, and the willingness to destroy anything that threatened its hunger. Tonight, that hunger had brought him to the Velvet Cage, a high-end gentleman's club in downtown Chicago that paid him protection money every month like clockwork. Zareth didn't typically visit the businesses under his umbrella. He had soldiers for that, lieutenants who collected and reported. But whispers had reached him about skimming, about the owner's growing confidence, about disrespect. Disrespect was a weed. You pulled it out by the roots, or it spread. He sat in the VIP section, a glass of bourbon untouched on the table before him. His second in command, Kirill, stood behind him like a well-dressed shadow, silent and lethal. The club pulsed with music, with bodies, with the desperate energy of people trying to forget their lives for a few hours. Zareth watched it all with the detached interest of a man who'd stopped feeling most things years ago. And then, the lights shifted. A single spotlight illuminated the main stage, and the energy in the room changed. Conversations died. Heads turned. Even the bartender stopped pouring mid-drink. She walked onto that stage like she owned every inch of it. Zareth's fingers, which had been drumming an absent rhythm on his knee, went still. She was a little person. He registered that immediately, clinically, the way he registered any detail that might be relevant. But that single fact dissolved into irrelevance within seconds, overwhelmed by the sheer presence she commanded. She wore crimson and black, leather and lace, and she moved with a confidence that seemed to bend the air around her. Her hair was a waterfall of midnight silk, and when she gripped the pole and spun, there was an athleticism, a strength, a deliberate artistry that demanded respect. Her name, the DJ announced, was Devora. She didn't smile the way the other dancers had. She didn't play coy or submissive or available. She danced, like she was daring the room to look away, like she knew they couldn't, like she held every person there in the palm of her small hand. Zareth's jaw tightened. He'd seen thousands of beautiful women, had taken some of them to his bed and forgotten their names by morning. Beauty was common in his world, easily bought, easily discarded. This wasn't beauty. This was something else entirely. This was power meeting power. When her eyes swept across the VIP section and locked with his, just for a heartbeat, Zareth felt it. That crack in his chest, that fault line splitting open. Her gaze didn't drop, didn't defer. She looked at him the way an equal might, with curiosity and challenge and absolutely zero fear. Then she spun away, and the moment shattered. "Boss," Kirill's voice came low near his ear. "The owner's here, ready to talk." Zareth didn't move. Tell him to wait. He couldn't have explained why if someone put a gun to his head. He just knew that he wasn't leaving this chair, until her set ended, until he understood what the hell had just happened to him. The song built to its climax. Devora held a pose on the pole, suspended in defiance of gravity, her body a perfect arc of strength and grace. Bills rained onto the stage. Men shouted appreciation. And through it all, she maintained that same fierce, untouchable presence. When she finally descended and began collecting her money, Zareth made a decision that would change everything. Kirill, I want her brought to me. His second hesitated. The owner. Boss. The owner can wait. Zareth's voice went cold. Or he can bleed. His choice. Devora Thorne had 3 rules for survival in a world that constantly underestimated her. 1. Never apologize for taking up space. 2. Never let them see you as anything less than you are. 3. Never, ever get involved with the kind of men who wore violence like a second skin. She'd broken the first 2 rules, never. The third, she was about to shatter. When Marcus, the club's floor manager, approached her backstage with that nervous energy that meant trouble, Devora was counting her take for the night. 1,500. Not bad for a Thursday. Dev, there's someone who wants to meet you. She didn't look up. Tell him I don't do private shows. This isn't... Marcus swallowed. This is Zareth Constantine. Her hands went still on the bills. Every person who worked in Chicago's underbelly knew that name, knew what it meant. Zareth Constantine wasn't just connected to the Russian Mafia. He practically was the Russian Mafia in this city. People who crossed him disappeared. People who pleased him got rich. People who interested him. Well, that was the question, wasn't it? Devora looked up, meeting Marcus's eyes. And he asked for you, specifically, in the VIP lounge. Marcus looked genuinely frightened. Dev, you can't say no to this guy. Watch me. She turned back to her money, but her heart was pounding. She'd seen him out there during her set, sitting in the shadows like some dark prince surveying his kingdom. She'd felt the weight of his stare, different from all the others. Heavier, hotter, dangerous. Men like that wanted to own things, and Devora Thorne was nobody's possession. Devora, Marcus's voice dropped. Please. If you refuse, it reflects on the club. On all of us. Just talk to him. 5 minutes. She could hear the fear beneath his words, and damn it, she cared about Marcus, about the other dancers, about this job that let her live independently, that let her be seen as something other than a curiosity or a pity case. Fine. She stood, all 4 feet 9 inches of her, and grabbed her silk robe. 5 minutes. Then I'm out. Marcus looked relieved enough to kiss her. The walk to the VIP lounge felt like walking into a lion's den. Devora kept her spine straight, her chin up. She'd faced down handsy customers, aggressive drunks, and entitled assholes who thought her size made her vulnerable. She could handle one mafia boss, probably. The lounge was quieter, separated from the main floor by heavy curtains and better soundproofing. The music became a distant pulse, and there, in a leather chair that might as well have been a throne, sat Zareth Constantine. Up close, he was devastating. Sharp cheekbones, a jaw that could cut glass, dark hair swept back from a face that belonged on ancient coins. His suit probably cost more than her car. But it was his eyes that caught her, ice blue, intelligent, and fixed on her with an intensity that made her skin prickle. A mountain of a man stood behind him, clearly security. Devora Thorne. Zareth's voice was smooth, accented, dangerous. He didn't stand. Sit. I'll stand, thanks. She crossed her arms. You wanted to talk. Talk. Something flickered in those cold eyes. Surprise, maybe. Or interest. You know who I am. Everyone knows who you are, Mr. Constantine. Doesn't mean I'm impressed. The security guy tensed. Zareth held up, one hand, a small gesture that froze the bigger man in place. You should be. He leaned forward slightly. I could buy this club with pocket change. I could own you with a signature. You could try. Devora smiled, sharp and fearless. But I'm not for sale. So if that's what this is about, we're done here. She turned to leave. Wait. One word, spoken quietly, but it carried weight. Command. She shouldn't have stopped. Every instinct screamed at her to keep walking. She stopped. I don't want to buy you. His voice had changed, lost some of its edge. I want to know you. Devora turned back, studying him. Why? Because in 20 years of coming to clubs like this, I've never seen anyone own a room the way you did tonight. Because you looked at me like I was just another man, not a king or a killer. Because... He paused, and for just a second, something human flickered across that perfect cold face. Because I can't stop thinking about what that means. It was the honesty that got her, the rawness beneath the power. One drink, she heard herself say. That's all you get. His smile was slow, predatory, victorious. That's all I need. One drink became two. Two became 3 hours of conversation that ranged from books to philosophy, to the absurdity of Chicago winters. Zareth Constantine, Devora discovered, was whip-smart, darkly funny, and dangerously easy to talk to once you got past the ice. He asked about her life, her dancing, her ambitions. He didn't learn to expect. He looked at her like she was a puzzle he wanted to solve, a book he wanted to memorize. It should have been flattering. Instead, it terrified her, because she could feel herself leaning in, lowering her guard, forgetting her own third rule. When she finally pulled herself away at 3 a.m, Zareth walked her to the club's back exit personally. Kirill, his shadow, stayed 10 paces behind. I want to see you again, Zareth said. Not a question, a statement of fact. This was a one-time thing. Was it? He stepped closer, and God, even with her in heels, he towered over her. But he didn't use his height to intimidate. He simply existed, gravitational. Tell me you didn't feel it too. Feel what? This. He gestured between them, frustration cracking through his control. Whatever this is. This pull. Devora's breath hitched. She had felt it. That's what scared her. You're dangerous, she said quietly. Your world is dangerous. I've worked too hard for my independence to risk it on someone who could destroy me without trying. I would never. You would. She cut him off, gentle but firm. Maybe not on purpose. But men like you consume things. People. You can't help it. It's how you're built. Something dark flashed in his eyes. Pain, maybe, or recognition. What if I promised not to? I wouldn't believe you. She reached up, had to reach up, always reaching up, and touched his cheek. The gesture surprised them both. His skin was warm, and a muscle jumped in his jaw. But thank you for tonight, for seeing me as just me. She walked away before he could respond, before she could change her mind, before she could do something stupid like kiss him. She made it halfway to her car before she heard his voice call out, rough and raw. Devora! She didn't turn around. This isn't over. It should have sounded like a threat. Instead, it sounded like a promise. And that's what kept her awake for the rest of the night. Zareth Constantine didn't chase women. Women chased him, with their carefully styled hair and designer dresses and practiced seduction. He enjoyed them the way he enjoyed expensive wine, consumed them, appreciated them, forgot them. Devora Thorne had walked away from him, and 3 days later, he still felt the phantom touch of her hand on his cheek. It was unacceptable. Boss, the shipment from Brighton Beach is delayed, Kirill reported during their morning briefing. Customs is sniffing around. Zareth stared at the papers in front of him, unseeing. Handle it. Also, Victor wants to meet about the territory dispute. Handle it. Kirill paused. You want me to handle a sit-down with Victor Sokolov? The man wants to carve up your South Side operations. Fine. Zareth looked up, irritated. I'll handle Victor. You handle customs. Anything else? His second-in-command studied him with concern. Boss, you've been distracted. Ever since that night at the club. I'm not distracted. You've checked your phone 40 times this morning. Zareth's hand, halfway to his phone again, froze. You're counting now? Someone has to keep you alive. Kirill crossed his arms. What is it about this woman? What indeed? Zareth had been asking himself the same question for 72 hours. He'd sent flowers, ignored. He'd sent a car, refused. He'd sent a handwritten note offering dinner at the city's finest restaurant, returned, unopened. Devora Thorne was treating him like he was nobody, and it was driving him absolutely insane. She's different, Zareth finally said. Different how? She doesn't want anything from me. Not my money, not my power, not my protection. She just wants to be left alone. So leave her alone. Zareth laughed, bitter. I can't. And that was the terrifying truth of it. He'd tried. He'd thrown himself into work, into violence, into all the things that usually grounded him. Nothing worked. She was under his skin, in his blood, rewiring something fundamental in his brain. He'd killed men for less disruption to his life. I need to see her again, he said. Boss. Not a suggestion, Kirill. Find out everything about her. Where she lives, where she goes, what she likes. I want to know her. That's called stalking. That's called research. Zareth stood, straightening his cuffs. I'm going to win her over, Kirill. One way or another. And if she keeps refusing, Zareth's jaw tightened. Then I'll find out what it's like to want something I can't have. The words tasted like poison. Devora noticed the tail on the fourth day. Black SUV, 2 cars back, following her from the club to her apartment in Wicker Park. Same vehicle she'd seen yesterday, and the day before. She wasn't stupid. She knew exactly who'd sent them. Fury bubbled up in her chest, hot and righteous. She'd told him no. She'd walked away. And instead of respecting that, he'd decided to... what? Watch her? Protect her? Own her from a distance? She changed course, pulling into a busy Starbucks parking lot. The SUV pulled in 3 spaces down. Devora got out of her car, marched over to the SUV, and rapped on the tinted window with her knuckles. Hard. The window lowered. A man with a broken nose and cautious eyes looked down at her. Tell your boss I want to meet. Tonight. And tell him if he ever has me followed again, I'll make his life a living hell. Ma'am, I don't... Save it. She pulled out her phone, snapped a photo of his license plate. I've got your plates, your face, and a lawyer on speed dial who specializes in harassment cases. Your call. The man's face paled. I'll relay the message. Good. She spun on her heel and walked back to her car, adrenaline singing through her veins. She was shaking by the time she got home, not from fear, from rage. Her phone rang 2 hours later. Unknown number. Hello. Devora. Zareth's voice, smooth and dark. I heard you wanted to meet. Your stalking isn't cute, Constantine. It's criminal. I was ensuring your safety. Bullshit. She paced her small living room. You were trying to control me because you can't handle rejection. Well, here's a news flash. I don't care how powerful you are or how many people fear you. You don't get to decide what's good for me. You don't get to make choices about my life. And you sure as hell don't get to have me followed like I'm some kind of asset you need to protect. Silence on the other end. Heavy, weighted silence. Then, you're right. She stopped pacing. What? You're right. I overstepped. It was... He exhaled, and she could picture him running a hand through his hair. That gesture of frustration she'd seen glimpses of. I'm not used to feeling out of control, and you make me feel completely out of control. That's not my problem. I know. His voice dropped. But it's become mine. I can't stop thinking about you, Devora. I can't sleep. I can't focus. You've become this constant presence in my head, and I don't know what to do with that. Her heart was pounding. Join the club. What? The admission slipped out before she could stop it. You think you're the only one affected here? I haven't been able to think straight since that night either. But the difference between us is that I'm smart enough to know this is a bad idea. Then help me understand why. Because you're a criminal, Zareth. She nearly shouted it. You hurt people for a living. You control an empire built on fear and violence. And I've spent my entire life fighting to be seen as more than my size, to be independent, to be strong. Getting involved with someone like you would undo all of that. I'd become Zareth Constantine's girlfriend, that novelty on his arm that people whisper about. I would never, you wouldn't mean to, but it would happen anyway. She sat down on her couch, suddenly exhausted. I like my life, Zareth. I like my freedom. I like knowing that everything I have, I earned myself. I can't give that up, not even for whatever this is between us. More silence, then quiet and raw. What if I could change? People like you don't change. What if I wanted to? For you. The words hung in the air between them, impossible and tempting and terrifying. Meet me, he said. One more time. Let me show you that I can respect your boundaries, that I can be what you need. And if you can't, then I'll let you go. It was a lie. They both knew it. Men like Zareth Constantine didn't let go of things they wanted. But God help her. She wanted to believe him. One meeting, she said finally. Neutral ground. No drivers, no security, no power plays. Just two people talking. Where? Millennium Park. Tomorrow. Noon. I'll be there. She hung up before she could change her mind, before she could acknowledge the fluttering in her chest that felt dangerously like hope. Zareth arrived at Millennium Park 15 minutes early, which was unusual for him. Punctuality was power, making people wait established dominance. But he found himself checking his watch every 30 seconds, scanning the crowds for a glimpse of midnight hair and fierce eyes. When Devora appeared, walking across the plaza in jeans and a leather jacket, he felt that same jolt he'd experienced in the club. She looked different in daylight, more real somehow, less untouchable, more devastating. She spotted him and walked over, chin up, guard up. No security? She asked. Curiel's watching from a distance, but he won't interfere. At her look, he added, I'm still a target, Devora. Some precautions are non-negotiable. She considered this, then nodded. Fair enough. They walked in silence for a while, weaving between tourists and locals. The Cloudgate sculpture gleamed in the autumn sun. Children ran squealing around its base. It was all so normal, so far removed from Zareth's usual world of shadows and violence. I haven't been here in years, he admitted. Why not? Men in my position don't do normal things. Parks, museums, coffee shops, they're all potential ambush sites. You learn to live in controlled environments. Devora looked up at him. That sounds exhausting. It's necessary. Is it? Or is that just what you tell yourself to justify the cage you've built? Her words hit harder than a fist. I didn't build a cage. I built an empire. Same thing, from where I'm standing. They stopped near a bench, and Devora sat, patting the space beside her. Zareth joined her, hyper-aware of how close they were, how small the space between them felt charged with possibility. Tell me something real, Devora said. Not the Mafia boss version, the real you. What makes you think there's a difference? Because I saw it that night at the club, when you laughed at my joke about Dostoevsky, when you admitted you'd never finished War and Peace, because it made you feel inadequate. That was real. Zareth stared out at the Chicago skyline, weighing his words. I was 7 when my father brought me to my first execution. He wanted me to understand the cost of weakness, of mercy, The man being killed had stolen from us. Not much, barely enough to feed his family for a week. But my father said examples had to be made. Devora's hand found his without planning to, her small fingers threading through his larger ones. The touch was electric. I couldn't watch, Zareth continued, his voice rough. I closed my eyes. And afterwards, my father beat me until I couldn't stand. Said Constantine's don't flinch, don't feel, don't break. Zareth, I learned. I learned to watch without flinching, to hurt without feeling, to build walls so high that nothing could touch me. He looked down at their joined hands, marveling at the contrast. And then you walked onto that stage, and all those walls I'd spent decades building just crumbled, like they were never there at all. A tear slid down Devora's cheek. I'm not your redemption, Zareth. I can't fix you. I'm not asking you to. He turned to face her fully. I'm asking you to see me, the way you did that first night. Not as a king or a killer, just as a man who's completely undone by you. This is insane. I know. It won't work. Probably not. Your world will eat us alive. Almost certainly. He cupped her face with his free hand. Gentle, reverent. But I'm drowning, Devora. And you're the only solid ground I've found in years. So tell me to walk away, and I'll try. Tell me you feel nothing, and I'll believe you. But if there's even a chance... She kissed him, rose up on the bench, pulled his face down to hers, and kissed him with a fierce intensity that stole his breath. It was a kiss full of frustration and desire and fear, and inevitability. A kiss that tasted like surrender and defiance all at once. When they broke apart, both breathing hard, Devora's eyes were wet. I feel it too, she whispered. God help me, I feel it too. Zareth's arms came around her, careful of her size but desperate to hold her. Then let me try. Let me prove I can be what you need. And if you can't? He pressed his forehead to hers. Then I'll have tried. That's more than I've done for anything else in my life. It was reckless. It was dangerous. It was probably going to destroy them both. But as Devora nodded against his chest, as Zareth held her like she was the only real thing in his world, neither of them could bring themselves to care. The next 3 weeks existed in a bubble. Zareth carved out time from his empire to take Devora to art museums, to quiet restaurants where he'd bought out entire sections for privacy, to late-night drives along Lake Michigan where they talked until dawn. He learned everything about her, her love of obscure poetry, her secret addiction to terrible reality TV, the way she hummed when she was concentrating on something. Devora learned him too. Learned that, beneath the ice-cold exterior was a man who quoted Pushkin, who loved old jazz, who felt everything deeply but showed nothing. She learned his tells, the slight tightening of his jaw when he was angry, the way his accent thickened when he was passionate about something, the rare, genuine smile that transformed his entire face. They kept it secret. Her friends at the club didn't know. His organization didn't know. It was their own private world, separate from everything else. It couldn't last. The first crack appeared on a Tuesday. Devora was leaving her apartment for an evening shift when she noticed the same black car that had followed her weeks ago. Her stomach dropped. She'd made Zareth promise. No surveillance, no guards, no interference in her normal life. She called him immediately. You're having me followed again. No, I'm not. His voice was sharp with concern. Where are you? Outside my building. Black sedan. 2 men inside. Get back inside. Now. Command mode. The voice that expected instant obedience. Don't tell me what to... Devora. Those aren't my men. Get inside and lock your door. Her blood went cold. She turned and ran for her building, fumbling with her keys. Behind her, she heard car doors opening. Who are they? She gasped into the phone, finally getting inside and slamming the door. Competition. Someone who wants to hurt me by hurting what's mine. I'm not yours. Not the time for semantics. She could hear him moving, shouting orders. Stay on the phone with me. I'm 10 minutes away. Zareth, I'm scared. His voice softened. I know, Malaya. But you're safe in your building. Your locks are good. And I'm coming for you. Those 10 minutes felt like hours. Devora paced her small apartment, phone pressed to her ear, listening to Zareth's voice talk her through breathing exercises, distract her with stories, anything to keep her calm. When the knock came at her door, she nearly screamed. It's me, Zareth's voice through the wood. Let me in. She yanked open the door, and he was there, disheveled, breathing hard, eyes wild with concern. He swept her into his arms before she could say anything. You're okay. You're okay. He repeated it like a mantra, hands running over her back, her arms checking for injuries. What's happening? He pulled back, cupping her face. Viktor Sokolov. He's making a move. He found out about you. I don't know how. I've been so careful. And he's using you to draw me out. Who is Viktor Sokolov? Someone who wants my territory, my power, my life. Zareth's jaw clenched. And now he wants to take you from me to prove he can. Devora's mind raced. This is what I was afraid of. Your world bleeding into mine. I know. I can't live like this, Zareth. Constantly looking over my shoulder, wondering if someone's going to hurt me to get to you. You won't have to. His voice went cold, lethal. I'm going to end this. Tonight. What does that mean? It means Viktor Sokolov is going to learn what happens when you threaten what belongs to me. I don't belong. He kissed her, hard and desperate. You do. Whether you want to admit it or not, you're mine. And I protect what's mine. Before she could argue, he pulled out his phone. Kirill, I need a full security detail at Devora's building. No one gets in or out without clearance. And find Viktor. I don't care if you have to burn down every one of his holdings. Find him. Zareth, you can't just... I can. I will. He looked at her with those ice-blue eyes now, blazing with something primal. This is who I am, Devora. This is the part of me you said you didn't want. But it's also the part that's going to keep you alive. She should have been terrified. Should have pushed him away. Ended this before it got worse. Instead, she pulled him back down for another kiss. Don't get killed doing something stupid, she whispered against his lips. I don't plan to. He touched her face one more time, memorizing her. I'll be back before dawn, and when I return, Viktor Sokolov won't be a problem anymore. He left, and Devora stood in her suddenly empty apartment, listening to footsteps in the hallway as armed men took up positions outside her door. Her independent life, she realized, had just ended. And the terrifying part was that she wasn't sure she minded. Zareth found Viktor Sokolov in a warehouse on the south side, surrounded by his crew, confident in his protection. That confidence died the moment Zareth walked through the door with 20 armed men. Viktor, Zareth's voice echoed in the cavernous space. We need to talk. The older man, grizzled and scarred, smiled. Constantine, I wondered when you'd show up. Your little pet is quite the weakness, isn't she? Zareth's expression didn't change, but his eyes went absolutely dead. You're going to apologize for calling her that. Then you're going to swear on your mother's grave that you'll never go near her again. Then maybe, I'll let you live. Viktor laughed. You're gone, soft boy. All over a dwarf stripper who... He didn't finish the sentence. Zareth moved faster than Viktor's guards could react, crossing the space and slamming the older man against a concrete pillar. His hand wrapped around Viktor's throat, cutting off air. Say another word about her, Zareth said quietly, and I'll tear out your tongue and feed it to you. Viktor's men raised their weapons. Kirill and Zareth's soldiers raised theirs faster. You want a war? Zareth's grip tightened. I'll give you a war, but understand this. You threatened her. You made this personal, and I will burn down everything you've built. I will destroy everyone you care about. I will make you beg for death before I grant it. Not because of territory or money or power, but because you made the mistake of thinking she was a vulnerability instead of the only thing that matters. He released Victor, who gasped for air and stepped back. You have 24 hours to leave Chicago. Take your crew, your operations, everything. If I see you or any of your men in my city again, there won't be a conversation. There'll just be bodies. You can't, Victor wheezed. I can. I just did. Zareth turned to leave, then paused. Oh, and Victor, the men you sent to her building, they're already dead. I had them dealt with on my way here. Their families will receive generous compensation for their loss. But you get nothing but my mercy, which you don't deserve. He walked out, leaving Victor alive but broken, his power shattered by a single declaration. By the time Zareth returned to Devorah's building, dawn was breaking. He was exhausted, running on adrenaline and something darker. But the moment he saw her, sitting on her couch, wrapped in a blanket, waiting for him, some of the violence drained out of him. Is it done? She asked. It's done. He'll be gone by tomorrow. Did you kill him? Zareth hesitated. No, but I wanted to. God, I wanted to. Devorah stood, crossing to him. Even with the height difference, she radiated strength. Thank you for not becoming that for me. I became worse things for you tonight. I know. She took his hand, led him to the couch. Tell me. So he did. He told her everything, the threats he'd made, the violence he'd enacted, the line he'd crossed from powerful to monstrous. He waited for her to flinch, to pull away, to finally see him as the monster he was. Instead, she climbed into his lap, her small frame fitting against his larger one, like they were made for each other. I see you, she said. All of you. The good, the bad, the terrifying. And I'm still here. Why? Because you're still here. Because when you could have killed him, you chose mercy. Because you came back to me covered in blood and let me see it all instead of hiding it. She touched his face, gentle. Because beneath all the violence and control, you're just a man who's never been allowed to feel anything. And with me, you feel everything. Zareth pulled her closer, buried his face in her hair. I love you. The words fell out before he could stop them, raw and real and terrifying. Devorah went still. Then, say that again. I love you. I'm completely, insanely, obsessively in love with you. And I know that's probably too much, too fast, too intense. But She kissed him, stopping the words. When she pulled back, her eyes were wet. I love you too. Even though it's crazy. Even though it terrifies me. Even though your world is dangerous and mine is too small and we're probably going to destroy each other. We might save each other instead. She laughed, watery. You're an optimist now? Only when it comes to you. They fell asleep on her couch, tangled together. Two broken people who'd found something whole in each other. Outside, Zareth's men kept watch. And somewhere across the city, Viktor Sokolov packed his bags and left, knowing that Zareth Constantine had found something more dangerous than power. He'd found something worth dying for. The thing about loving a Mafia king, Devorah discovered, was that it meant everyone else wanted to dethrone him. In the 3 months following Victor's exile, Zareth's world became her world. She moved into his penthouse, not because he demanded it, but because her apartment had been compromised, and she was practical if nothing else. She met his inner circle, endured their skepticism and occasional condescension, and slowly won them over through sheer force of personality. Kirill was the first to crack. She found him in Zareth's study one night, going over shipment manifests. and simply started asking questions. By dawn, they'd reorganized the entire logistics system, saving the organization millions. "You're terrifying," Kirill had said, respect evident. No wonder he's obsessed. But it wasn't all strategy sessions and grudging respect. There were gala events where Devora felt every stare, every whisper. There were meetings where men twice her size dismissed her until Zareth made it clear that disrespecting her meant disrespecting him. There were nights when the violence of his world came home with him, when she'd find him in his office, staring at his hands like they belonged to a stranger. Those nights, she'd climb into his lap and hold him until the ghosts retreated. "I'm ruining you," he said one night, voice rough. "Or I'm saving you." She traced his jawline. Perspective matters. But the cage was closing in, slowly, inevitably. She'd stopped dancing at the velvet cage, partly for safety, partly because Zareth's enemies would have used it against him. She told herself it was temporary, that she'd go back once things settled. But things never settled in Zareth's world. Her friends from the club stopped calling as much. Her independence, the thing she'd fought so hard for, was slipping away, bit by bit, traded for security and love, and a man who looked at her like she was his entire world. Most days, it felt worth it. Some days, she felt herself disappearing. "I need space," she told him one morning over coffee. Zareth looked up from his newspaper, immediately alert. "What kind of space?" "Not from you. From this." She gestured at the penthouse, the armed guards outside, the gilded cage their love had become. "I want to go to a bookstore, alone, without security, like a normal person. That's not safe." "I don't care." His jaw tightened. "I do. Victor's gone, but there are others, always others." "So what? I just stay locked up, here forever." "Until the threats are neutralized, yes." Devora stood, fury bubbling up. "You don't get to make that call for me, Zareth. I do when your life is at stake." "My life? Or your peace of mind?" She crossed her arms. "Because from where I'm standing, this feels less like protection and more like possession." He stood too, frustration evident. "That's not fair." "Isn't it? You've slowly taken over every aspect of my existence. Where I live, where I go, who I see. You say it's for my safety, but it's also about control, about knowing where I am every second, about not being able to handle the thought of me out in the world without you watching. Because the world is dangerous." His accent thickened. "Because there are men out there who would hurt you just to prove they can. Because losing you would destroy me, and I can't, I won't, risk it. Even if keeping me safe means keeping me caged." The question hung between them, heavy and painful. Zareth's shoulders sagged. "I don't know how to love you without protecting you. I don't know how to let you be free when every instinct I have screams to keep you close, keep you safe, keep you mine." Devora's anger softened. She crossed to him, took his hands. "I know, and I know this isn't easy for you. But Zareth, if you love me the way you say you do, you have to trust me to make my own choices, even if they scare you, even if they put me at risk. What if something happens? Then something happens, but at least I'll have lived on my own terms." He pulled her close, resting his chin on top of her head. "You're asking me to go against every protective instinct I have. I'm asking you to love me as an equal, not as something to guard. You are my equal. You're everything. Then prove it. Let me breathe." It took him a long moment, but finally he nodded. "Okay, but you take Kirill as a compromise. He stays back, gives you space, but he's there if something goes wrong." It wasn't perfect, but it was something. Deal. That afternoon, Devora walked into a bookstore in Lincoln Park, Kirill trailing 30 feet behind, and for the first time in months, she felt like herself again. She bought a stack of poetry books and a terrible romance novel, and when she returned to the penthouse, Zareth was waiting. "Thank you," she said. "For what?" "For trying." He pulled her into his arms. "I'll always try for you, even when it kills me." And she believed him. But neither of them realized that their attempt at normalcy had been noticed, that dangerous eyes were watching, that the worst threat wasn't from Zareth's rivals, but from something closer to home. The betrayal came from within. Alexei Konstantin, Zareth's cousin and third in command, had watched Zareth's descent into obsession with growing resentment. In their world, weakness was death, and love was the ultimate weakness. Zareth had become distracted, soft, making decisions based on a woman instead of profit and power. It was unacceptable. More than that, it was an opportunity. Alexei had been building his own network for years, waiting for the right moment to make his move. Zareth's obsession with Devora was that moment. All he needed was to remove her from the equation, and Zareth would either shatter, making him easy to overthrow, or rage so hard that he'd make mistakes. Either way, Alexei won. Family, Alexei believed, was often the greatest liability. He made his move on a Thursday. Devora was at a medical appointment. Regular checkup. Nothing unusual. Kirill waited in the lobby, as had become their routine. She'd fought for this small piece of independence, and Zareth had reluctantly agreed to let her have privacy during doctor's visits. That privacy became a vulnerability. Alexei's men struck in the parking garage, fast and professional. Kirill heard the scuffle through his earpiece, but by the time he reached the garage, Devora was gone, and two of Alexei's men were dead. She'd fought back. Of course she had. Kirill called Zareth immediately. "Boss, we have a situation." Zareth's world stopped. Not slowed, not paused. Stopped completely, like someone had reached into his chest and physically stopped his heart. "What kind of situation?" "Devora's been taken. Parking garage. Professional hit. 2 dead attackers. No sign of her or the extraction team." The phone cracked in Zareth's grip. "When?" 17 minutes ago." 17 minutes. She'd been in enemy hands for 17 minutes. And every second was another second of terror. Another second of violence. Another second where she might be. He couldn't finish the thought. "Lock down the city," he said, his voice devoid of emotion. Feeling would come later. Right now, he needed to be the killer he'd trained to be. Every contact, every asset, every person who owes me a favor. Find her, and find out who's responsible. Already working on it. Boss. Kirill hesitated. "The attackers were ours." "What?" "Our people. Our organization. This is internal." The rage that flooded through Zareth was cold, surgical, absolute. Internal meant someone close, someone trusted, someone who would understand exactly how to hurt him, someone who was about to learn what happened when you touched what was his. "Pull security footage from the garage. Cross-reference with our personnel files. I want a name within the hour." "On it." Zareth stood in his office, surrounded by luxury and power, and felt completely helpless. Somewhere in this city, Devora was terrified, maybe hurt, maybe... His phone rang. Unknown number. He answered. "Who is this?" "Cousin." Alexei's voice, smug and satisfied. "We need to talk." "Where is she?" "Safe, for now. Whether she stays that way depends entirely on you." Zareth's free hand clenched into a fist. "What do you want?" "Your empire, your operations, your seat at the table. Sign it all over to me. Walk away from the family business, and I'll give her back unharmed." "You're insane." "I'm ambitious. There's a difference." Alexei chuckled. "You've gone soft, Zareth. This is what happens when you let a woman distract you from what matters. Power is what matters. Territory is what matters. She's just collateral. If you hurt her, you'll what? You'll kill me. Your own blood. Alexei's voice hardened. You've got 24 hours to decide. Your empire for her life. Choose wisely, cousin. Because if you come after her, if you try to find her, I'll send her back to you in pieces. The line went dead. Zareth stood frozen for 10 seconds. Then he threw the phone across the room, with enough force to shatter it against the wall. Kirill burst into the office. Boss, I heard. It's Alexei. Zareth's voice was eerily calm. He has her. He wants my empire in exchange for her life. What are you going to do? Zareth looked at his second-in-command, and Kirill actually stepped back at what he saw in those ice-blue eyes. Pure, undiluted murder. I'm going to find her. I'm going to kill everyone standing between us. And then I'm going to make Alexei beg for the mercy I won't give him. Zareth grabbed his coat. Assemble the entire organization. Call in every favor we're owed. I want Alexei's location within 6 hours. And if he kills her when he realizes we're coming? Zareth's smile was terrifying. Then I'll kill him slowly. So slowly that death will be a relief he never reaches. Boss, there's another option. You could give him what he wants. No. The word was absolute. I'll burn down my entire empire before I negotiate with someone who took her. She's not collateral. She's not leverage. She's everything. And anyone who doesn't understand that is about to learn a very painful lesson. Kirill nodded, understanding. I'll make the calls. As his second left, Zareth walked to the window, looking out over the city he'd conquered, the empire he'd built. None of it mattered. Not the power, not the money, not the fear, or respect, or legacy. There was only Devora, only getting her back, only making sure she knew that he'd tear apart the world to keep her safe, even if it meant destroying himself in the process. Devora came to consciousness in darkness. Her head throbbed. Her wrists were zip-tied behind her back. She was sitting in a chair in what felt like a basement, cold concrete under her feet, damp air, distant sound of traffic. She'd been in tight situations before, dealt with handsy customers and aggressive drunks. But this was different. This was targeted, professional. This was because of Zareth. She's awake. A voice from the shadows. Male, unfamiliar. A light clicked on, blinding her momentarily. When her vision adjusted, she saw 3 men. 2 were obvious muscle, thick necks, dead eyes, guns visible. The third was different, well-dressed, younger, with features that reminded her of. You look like him, she said. Zareth. Your family. The man smiled. Alexei Constantine, his cousin, and the man who's going to use you to take everything he has. Good luck with that. Confidence. I like it. Alexei crouched in front of her, studying her face. You're really quite small, aren't you? I can see why he's obsessed. You're exotic. Different. Like a rare pet. Devora's jaw clenched. I'm not a pet. No? Then what are you? His equal? Alexei laughed. Please. You're a stripper. He became infatuated with. A novelty. The moment he gets bored, you're gone. You don't know anything about us. I know he's making you into his weakness. I know he's distracted, soft, making mistakes. I know that in our world, that kind of weakness gets you killed. Alexei stood. So I'm doing him a favor, really. Removing the distraction, allowing him to focus on what matters. By kidnapping me, by giving him a choice. You or his empire. We'll see what he really values. Devora's stomach dropped. He won't choose. He'll come for both. Then he'll lose both. Alexei shrugged. Either way, I win. If he gives up his power, I take it. If he comes after you, I kill you, and use his rage to destroy him. Simple mathematics. You're underestimating him. Am I? Or are you overestimating how much you matter? Alexei headed for the door, then paused. For what it's worth, I don't want to hurt you. You're just in the wrong place, with the wrong man, at the wrong time. But if Zareth forces my hand, I'll do what's necessary. He left, taking his guards with him. The door locked with an ominous click. Devora sat in the darkness, mind racing. She knew Zareth would be tearing apart the city looking for her, knew he wouldn't negotiate, knew he'd come for her with everything he had. The question was whether she'd still be alive when he arrived. She tested the zip ties, feeling the bite of plastic against her wrists. Too tight to slip. She'd need something sharp, or... Wait. Her heels. They'd taken her phone, her purse, but they'd left her wearing her boots. And sewn into the heel of her right boot was a small knife, installed there years ago when she'd first started dancing in rough clubs. It took 15 minutes of painful contortion to position herself so she could reach the boot, another 10 to extract the knife without dropping it. By the time she had the blade against the zip ties, her shoulders screamed in protest. But Devora Thorne had spent her life adapting to a world not built for her. She was patient. She was resourceful. And she sure as hell wasn't going to sit around waiting to be rescued. The zip tie snapped. Her hands were free. Now she just needed to figure out where she was, how many guards were outside, and how to get a message to Zareth before Alexei decided she was more trouble than she was worth. She stood, quietly testing the door. Locked, as expected. But the basement had a small window near the ceiling, grimy and barred, but potentially useful. Devora pushed a box beneath it, climbed up, and peered out. Street level. She could see passing cars, pedestrians, a bodega across the street with a neon sign. A landmark. Something she could use. She memorized everything she could see, then climbed down and started exploring her prison for anything that could help. Outside, Alexei's men stood guard, confident in their security. They didn't realize that the small woman in the basement was already planning their downfall. And miles away, Zareth Constantine was assembling an army. Zareth found Alexei's location through a combination of surveillance footage, informant networks, and pure rage-fueled determination. An abandoned factory in Pilsen, guarded by a dozen men, isolated enough that gunfire wouldn't immediately draw police attention. Perfect for a massacre. He assembled his best fighters, 20 men who'd proven themselves in blood and battle. Kirill tried to argue for a larger force, but Zareth refused. More men means more noise. I want this surgical. Fast. Brutal. He checked his weapons with practiced efficiency. Anyone who gets between me and her dies. Anyone who surrenders lives, unless they've touched her. Clear. His men nodded, grim-faced. They moved at 3 a.m, when human attention was at its lowest, when even criminals started to relax. Zareth's team hit the factory like a force of nature. Simultaneous breaches from 3 points, suppressors keeping the gunfire muffled, coordination perfect. Alexei's guards never stood a chance. Zareth moved through the factory with lethal precision, every shot placed, every movement economical. He'd been trained for this since childhood, and tonight, all that training came together in a symphony of violence. He found Alexei in a second-floor office, watching security feeds with growing panic. "Cousin," Zareth said quietly, gun pointed at Alexei's head. "Where is she?" "You're making a mistake. Where is she?" "Basement. Southwest corner. She's unharmed, I swear." Zareth shot him in the kneecap. Alexei screamed, collapsing. Zareth stood over him, expression empty. "That's for taking her. The next one's for making her afraid." He fired again, the other knee. "Zareth, please. You wanted my empire. You wanted my power. But you forgot the most important rule of our world. Zareth crouched beside his cousin. You don't touch family. And she's more family than you ever were. You've gone insane. I've gone honest. Zareth stood. I'll deal with you later. First, I'm getting her back. He left Alexei bleeding on the floor, surrounded by Zareth's men, and ran for the basement. The door was locked. He kicked it open, gun raised, expecting resistance. Instead, he found Devora standing over two unconscious guards, a pipe in her hands, determination on her face. She looked up at him, and her expression crumpled. Zareth! He crossed the space in 3 strides, pulling her into his arms so tightly, it must have hurt. She didn't complain, just wrapped her arms around his neck and held on. Are you hurt? He demanded, pulling, back to check her over. Did they touch you? Did they? I'm fine. Scared, but fine. She touched his face, noting the blood splatter. You came. Of course I came. Did you really think I wouldn't burn down the entire city to find you? I was kind of counting on it. She smiled, watery. I got myself mostly out, though. Those guards are just unconscious. Zareth looked at the guards, then back at her, something like awe in his eyes. You're incredible. I'm practical, and angry, mostly angry. He kissed her then, desperate and relieved, tasting salt from tears he wasn't sure were his or hers. I love you, he said against her lips. I love you so much it terrifies me. I know. I love you too. Now take me home. What about Alexei? Devora's expression hardened. What about him? He's upstairs, bleeding, waiting for me to decide his fate. She was quiet for a moment then. He would have killed me, not because I wronged him, but because I mattered to you. That's not forgivable. No, it's not. So end it. Permanently. She looked up at him, and there was steel in her gaze. I won't lie and say I want him dead, but I won't lie and say he deserves to live either. This is your world, Zareth. Your call. He studied her face, seeing the woman who'd fought her way out of captivity, who'd knocked out armed guards, who'd survived in his world and come out stronger. You're right. It is my world, but you're part of it now. So we make this call together. They walked upstairs hand in hand, found Alexei where Zareth had left him, pale from blood loss, eyes wide with fear. Please, Alexei gasped when he saw them. I'm sorry. I made a mistake. I'll leave the country. You'll never see me again. Zareth knelt beside him. You're right about one thing. I'll never see you again. He looked at Devora one more time. She nodded. Just once. Zareth stood, raised his gun, and ended it. The next few weeks were chaos. Zareth had to restructure his entire organization, root out anyone who'd known about Alexei's plan, shore up alliances that had weakened during the conflict. It meant long days, violent nights, and the constant reminder that his world was built on blood. But through it all, Devora was there. She sat in on meetings, offering insights that surprised his lieutenants. She reorganized his security protocols, implementing systems that accounted for threats they'd never considered. She proved time and again that she wasn't just Zareth's weakness. She was his strength. One night, 3 weeks after Alexei's death, they sat on the penthouse balcony, looking out over Chicago. Zareth had a rare moment of quiet, and Devora was curled against his side. Do you regret it? He asked. Getting involved with me? My world? She was quiet for a long moment. I regret the fear, the kidnapping, the constant awareness that someone might try to hurt you through me. But do I regret loving you? No, never. Even though I'm a monster? You're not a monster. You're a man shaped by monsters who's trying to be better. She tilted her head to look up at him. You think I don't see it? The way you've changed since we met? The way you question your own violence now, the way you try to find other solutions before resorting to bloodshed. I still killed Alexei. He would have killed me. That's not monstrosity. That's protection. There's a thin line between the two. Then we'll walk that line together. She took his hand. I'm not naive, Zareth. I know what you are, what you do, but I also know you're trying, and that's enough for me. He pulled her closer, breathing in her scent, grounding himself in her presence. I want to marry you. The words surprised them both. Devora pulled back, eyes wide. What? I want to marry you. Make you mine in every way that matters. Build a life that's ours, not just mine with you in it. He cupped her face. I know it's probably too fast, too intense, too much, but I've never been more certain of anything in my life. Zareth. She was crying now, happy tears. You're insane. I'm aware. This won't be easy. Your world will always be complicated. People will always underestimate me, talk about us, question why you chose me. Let them talk. Let them question. I know why I chose you. You're the strongest person I've ever met. You make me want to be better. You see the man beneath the monster and love him anyway. Devora laughed through her tears. You're really bad at proposals. Is that a no? That's a yes, you ridiculous man. Yes, I'll marry you. Yes, I'll build a life with you. Yes to all of it. He kissed her then, gentle and reverent, and for the first time in his life, Zareth Constantine felt something other than power or fear or rage. He felt hope. The wedding was small, private, held in a garden in Lincoln Park with only their closest people present. Kirill stood as best man, still gruff but secretly pleased. A few of Devora's friends from her old life attended, tentatively accepting this new reality. When Devora walked down the aisle in a custom dress that made her look like midnight and starlight, Zareth's infamous control cracked completely. Tears slid down his face. Unchecked, unashamed. She was his. Finally, completely, legally his. And he was hers. The vows they wrote were simple. Zareth promised to protect her, love her, and never cage her. Devora promised to challenge him, support him, and never let him forget his humanity. When they kissed as husband and wife, Kirill muttered, "About damn time." But there was love in it. The reception was held at the penthouse, and as the night wore on, Zareth pulled Devora onto the balcony, away from the crowd. Happy? He asked, deliriously. She leaned against the railing, looking out at the city that had brought them together. You know, when I walked into the velvet cage 6 months ago, I had no idea my life was about to change completely. Regret it? Not for a second. She turned to face him. You've given me more than I ever thought I'd have. Not just material things, but feeling seen, feeling powerful, feeling like I could take on the world. You could. You do. He wrapped his arms around her waist. You've changed me too, you know. Made me realize that power without purpose is just tyranny. That strength means protecting what matters, not just destroying what threatens. Look at us, getting all philosophical. That's what marriage does, apparently. They laughed and kissed and held each other as the city glittered below. Neither of them knew what the future held. There would be more threats, more challenges, more moments where their different worlds collided violently. But they would face it together, the feared Mafia boss and the woman who'd brought him to his knees. Because in the end, love wasn't about one person completing another. It was about two people choosing each other every single day, despite the obstacles. And Zareth and Devora, they'd keep choosing each other, no matter what came next. The city below pulsed with life, with danger, with possibility.